Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Got this? Chapter 13, text 15. This morning I spoke on the topic of Krishna as being Suksmah, subtle. Suksmah means not something that's not immediately obvious, that requires a certain, it requires subtle intelligence to understand the subtle. Those who don't have subtle intelligence, they reject even the existence of that which is subtle. So this topic of Krishna's not being very easy to understand due to being very subtle could be discussed in much more detail also. It's a major point of understanding. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vaidesha sarveraham eva vedyaha, by all the Vedas am I to be known. Or, in all the Vedas, I am the object of knowledge. But it is possible to be very learned in the Vedic knowledge and still not understand Krishna. When he refers to the Mayaya-pahrita jnana, those who have much knowledge, but their actual knowledge is covered by illusion. Such people, Krishna says, will never surrender to me, because they're not looking for Krishna. If you're not looking for Krishna, you won't find Krishna. Here is one hat on the floor, some Western detective style hat, something like that. So, if I ask you to look on the floor, I drop my driving license. Can you look and find it? So you won't find the hat because you're not looking for it. So from the beginning, if one seeks in the Vedic literature something else than Krishna, then one won't find Krishna. A prime example of this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was so learned in all the scriptures. But he couldn't find, he knew Vishnu Sahasranama, I'm sure, among many other scriptures, verbatim. For a Pandit in those days to know Vishnu Sahasranama, that was just one of many things which they would know verbatim. But even though the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally present before him, he couldn't recognize him. Atapite deva padambuja tvayam prasada leshanu grahita eva hi janati tattvam bhagavang smahim no nachanya ekopi chirang vichinvan. If one is blessed with a little drop of Krishna's mercy, he can understand Krishna. Otherwise he won't. So simply to be learned or to make one's own investigation into Vedic literature will not help one. It's not that research into Vedic literature should be stopped, but the vital principle for actually understanding the Vedic literature is the mercy of he who is to be understood by the Vedic literature. And without that, one can be very learned, very expert in bringing arguments and counter-arguments, but he'll miss the point altogether. People will come to us and say, well, do you follow Advaita or Dvaita? But what does it matter to you, sir? It's not simply some philosophical, intellectual game. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna didn't say, now I came to establish Advaita or Dvaita. These philosophies were formulated later. Actually, there was, in one sense, no need of formulating Dvaitavad, because it was only to counteract the erroneous Advaitavad which had been propagated. Anyway, regarding the subtlety of the Supreme Lord, this is also discussed in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which in some ways it's the most difficult chapter, because it deals with the subtle nature of the Supreme. Even to take, beginning with chapter 13, text 13. Gyayam, Krishna says, Gyayam, that which is the object of knowledge. Gyayam yat tat pravakshami, I shall now explain that which is to be known. You just gave the whole translation of the verse, did you? Yeah. Hmm? Okay. But, so you already gave the Yajgyatvam knowing which one attains to amrita, to a death situation beyond death, or nectar. Now, anadimat parang brahma nasattanna saduchyate. This is where you can get really mixed up if you don't get a proper guide to understand this. Anadi, beginningless. Mat param, so Shankara takes this to mean, Mat param Brahma means that Brahma is superior to me. So there's a problem with that. What's the problem with that? Go to the 14th chapter. Brahmano hi pratishtaham nasattanna saduchyate. So, it is beyond material cause and effects. So I'll give the full translation of the verse as given by Srila Prabhupada. You already gave it. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So we definitely need some... You like to put your hand on your mouth. You please go and wash it. And don't put your hand on your mouth. For further information about this, contact any one of my disciples who's heard my classes. You know about this? You know? You've heard from my classes? Yeah. Okay. So, next verse. Sarvatah panipadam tat sarvatokshikshiro mukham sarvatah shutimal loke sarvamavritya tishtati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way the super soul exists, pervading everything. Now definitely, unless one is guided, you can't understand this at all. The impersonalists take this to mean, well, everywhere means ultimately nowhere. So, in the next verse, Savendriya gunabhasam sarvendriya vivarjitam asaktam sarva bhritchaiva nirgunam guna bhuktricha. Yeah, the super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. So what does this mean? It's very subtle. So to be understand, he has no material senses, but he has spiritual senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time he is the master of all the modes of material nature. There's so much to be said about this, but I'm just going through quickly. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charameva cha sukshmatvat taddavigyayam durastham chantike chatat. That supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-being. Because he is subtle, sukshmatvat, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Sukshmatvat tat avigyayam. So here we have the sukshma, very subtle. So, on account of being very subtle, avigyayam cannot be fully understood. Now Krishna started this section by saying, anyone remember? Gyayam yattad pravakshami. Now I will tell you about the gyayam, that which is to be known. Now he says, sukshmatvat, I have to look and see. Yat sukshmatvat tad avigyayam. Because of being so subtle, he cannot be fully understood. So we can understand Krishna if we hear from Krishna, but we cannot understand everything about Krishna. I'll just read one more verse in this series. Avibhaktang cha bhuteshu vibhaktam eva chastitam bhuta bhatri chatajgeyam graseshnu prabhavishnu cha. Although the Supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. So he's situated in everyone's heart, but he's not divided. Definitely takes very fine intelligence, Suksmah buddhi, or spiritual intelligence to understand this. And generally that will be misunderstood. The envious impersonalists always want to depersonalize the Supreme Lord. Another example in Bhagavad Gita of how Krishna subtly exists. Matah parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. Krishna says that there is nothing superior to me. No such thing exists. Mai sarvamidang protam sutre manigana iva. But at the same time, even though he's superior, he's not immediately obvious. Just like a string of pearls, well, it's called a string of pearls, but you can't see the string. But at the same time, we can understand, and another example we can give, just like this neck beads here. There are so many beads, you can only see the beads, but you can't see the string. But we understand there must be some string in there to hold it together. So you can't see it, but its existence is inferred. So Krishna supports everything. You may say, well, where is he? We may not see him directly, but we understand there must be something holding everything all together. That is Krishna. Parokshavad rishayo parokshang chamama priyaha. Krishna says elsewhere in Bhagavatam that the rishis, they speak in indirect, they often speak in indirect ways. And Krishna also likes that, because he doesn't reveal himself to the envious. The secrets are not to be told to everyone. The secrets are to be kept among very intimate people. So, that's a little bit more about Suksmah. The names just before Suksmah was, we had the name just before this, Sumukha, which means a very beautiful face. But his beauty is Sukshma, it's not sthula, it's not gross. If we see the beauty of a beautiful woman, that beauty consists of skin, fat, muscle, blood, and various other things, none of which are very pleasant. But Krishna's form is Satchidananda Vigraha, Yang Shyama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam. His form is completely spiritual. Although to us to people who are on the gross platform, they cannot see or experience the subtle. Just like that example, there may be some very subtle piece of music, but someone who's not trained in music, they only hear some gross sound. So the next name we had Sumukha, Sukshma. Next name is Sughosha. So Ghosha means sound. So Sughosha means pleasant sound, or very best sound. Not the sound of the cell phone. Yeah. That is Kughosha. Please turn off your cell phone. We can't do anything about the traffic sound, but we have to tolerate that. So the commentators have given various meanings. he whose voice is the Vedas. The Vedas are said to be apaurushaya. They do not originate with any person. But then again, we find Narayana Veda Sakshat, that the Vedas emanate from Narayana. So both things are correct. They are not the Vedas are not the compositions of some materially limited mind. They are not some historical literature which was composed at a certain point in time. They are eternally existing. And in that sense, they're never composed. So in that way, they are apaurushaya. But Veda Narayana Sakshat, the Vedas, they directly emanate from Narayana, and his voice is the Vedas. Vedavani. And the Vedas also praise Narayana. And his voice is very beautiful. Baladev Vidya Bhushan, he gives the meaning of this, particularly refers to Krishna's flute playing, which charms Brahma, Shiva, Narada, the gopis of Vrindavan, is most charming. Krishna is especially sweet. There are certain features of Krishna which are of sweetness, which are not found even in Narayana. One of the features of Krishna that is especially sweet is his Venu Madhuri, the beautiful sound of, here it said, his Venu. Krishna has different flutes. Venu, Vangshi, Murali. These are the three. And then there's the Vangshuli, which is very long. Different flutes are described. These three are very famous. Venu, Vangshi, Murali. They're not synonyms because they're different flutes. They're bigger. Some are bigger than others. So Krishna is Sumukha, and from his mouth comes Sughosha. And that Sughosha, his instructions in the forms of the Vedas, that is Suksmah. It's not understandable to everyone. So let's see what else they say. Yeah, Krishna's flute playing, his voice also is very beautiful. We cannot imagine. We shall have to go to the spiritual world to hear the sound of his voice. We cannot imagine the sound of his flute playing, which captivates all the three worlds. Unfortunately for the atheists, they don't have faith in such things. Or the dry Vedic scholars, they're very busy examining grammatical roots and so many linguistic rules to try to understand the Vedas. But they're not attracted to the sound of Krishna's flute or to the sound of Krishna's name. But actually, especially in this Kali Yuga, if there is to be any spiritual life, there must be the holy name of Krishna. There are so many scholars, they like to discuss this way, that way, another way, but the holy name of Krishna, that is the answer to all different discussions. All the beautiful sound of the Vedas, all the Vedic teachings, they're all collected in the name of Krishna. Rig Veda ta Yajur Veda Samaveda Piyatharvanaha Adhitas Tena Yenoktam Harirityaksharadvayam. Anyone who says these two syllables, Ha-ri, that means they already studied all the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda. What is that verse Devahuti says? Yanna Aho batasvapachoto gariyan Yajjihvagre vartate nama tubhyam tapas te juhuvur sasnurarya brahmanucha nama grinanti te. Do you know this verse? No. So she says, addressing her son, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's been speaking to her with a very beautiful voice, with his very beautiful face, he's been speaking very beautiful instructions to her. And she says, "Oh, how wonderful that even persons born in the family of dog eaters, if they chant, if their holy name is on their tongue, on the tip of their tongue, then it's understood that they already surpassed all the high-class Vedic activities." Very high-class, pious people, they like to perform various vows. We just had that, Suvrata, performing vows. They visit holy places and take bath in various holy places. They perform austerities, fasting, and so many things. All the activities of the people who are called Arya, or very high-class people. But Devahuti says that someone not very high-class, they may be from the family of dog-eaters, or we would say in modern Indian language, SC, ST. You don't know what that is. That means the lowest class of people according to the Hindu stratification, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. Formerly they were not allowed in the temples at all. Only Mahatma Gandhi made some agitation and they were allowed inside. But Devahuti says that someone from such a background, they may be considered very low class according to social consideration. But if they are chanting the holy names of Krishna, they are more glorious than some very high class Brahmana who performs austerities, studies Shastra, and so on. So that is another quality of Krishna's Sughosha, his holy name. The sound of his holy name makes everything else Su or Shobham, very, very beautiful, very glorious, very wonderful, very desirable, very nice. Actually in Kali Yuga everyone is fallen. But by chanting the holy names one becomes elevated. Even the commentators, they say that they emphasize the Veda is the sound of Krishna's. But in Kali Yuga it's very difficult to find anyone who can even memorize the Vedas, what to speak of chanting them properly with the different intonations, svaras. Therefore, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Krivalam, Kalau Nascheva, 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 Gatir Anyatha. You can give the translation. What's going on? Hindi translation, is it? Is it? Hindi translation. See, these young boys, they don't know all the philosophy, but they like to chant Hare Krishna and sometimes fall asleep offering obeisances. Anyway, we'll gradually teach them all the philosophy. Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned one of his friends. He said he was a great Vaishnava, but when he was very old, he used to offer obeisances and then just fall asleep. Anyway, it's not recommended, but sometimes it might happen. So here we get the conclusion of all the Vishnu Sahasranama. The best sound is the sound of Krishna's name. These are 1,000 names of Vishnu. By these 1,000 names we can understand, or we can, by the grace of Krishna, we can begin to understand some of his qualities. But everything is complete in the chanting of his holy name. Let me just see if there's anything more to say about this. Yeah, all the Vedas sing his glories. Vedaisya sarvarahameva vedyaha.
వేదాలన్నీ కూడా కృష్ణుడి యొక్క గొప్పతనాన్ని కీర్తిస్తూ ఉంటాయి.
Yang Brahma Varanendra Rudra Maratustun Vanti Divyaista Vedai Sango Pango Pas Vedai Sango Panishadai Gayanti Yang Samagaha. All the Vedas, the corollary Upanishads, they all sing his glories. They sing his glories. Oh, there's also the sound of his that also comes in Bhagavad Gita. All the conches were blowing Sughosho Tumalo Bhavat. When all the conches of Krishna Panchajanyam Hrihi Shrishikesham Devadattam Dhananjaya. So all the conches blew together. What is that? Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putra Yudhishthiraha. All the conches were blowing together, and it made a very great sound. So the sound of his conch is very auspicious. This conch sound is very auspicious. It blows away all the impurities in the heart, all the subtle demons who are floating in the atmosphere. Many times in the Western world we used to go on Harinam Sankirtan, and we used to be physically attacked by drunken people. It was a common thing. Not much nowadays, but in those days it was. 1970s. So whenever there was demoniac attack, we would have the conch with us, and we would sing prayers to Lord Nrsimha and blow the conch, and the demons would become bewildered and run away. They just become completely bewildered, and they say, stop that. So it's also stated in Bhagavatam that when Krishna, he returned to Dwarka after being with the Pandavas for such a long time, he blew his conch, and all the inhabitants of Dwarka felt as if their life had come back to them, because they can understand this is Krishna. Similarly, although in Vrindavan Leela the Shankar is not much, it's not because it's the sign of royalty, although that is one of the signs on Krishna's feet. But when Krishna, after being away for so long, entered Vrindavan, he blew his conch, and then all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, similarly, they came back to life, understanding that Krishna is coming. So we should allow the beautiful sounds of Krishna to enter our ears. One reason we're establishing these rural projects is that so that we don't have to listen to one thing is we don't have to hear the traffic sounds. We don't have to hear the sounds of so many materialistic people babbling, buy this, buy that, vote for me. The only sound is Hari Kirtan, Hari Katha, and the sound of the cows. Hare Krishna. So with that Sughosha, that pleasant saying, I'll finish this talk here. Yeah, any question or comment, please? Yeah.
Third canto, Lord Kapila explains devotional service in different modes, mode of
Not like in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance, in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance.
So this verse which devotee quotes, does it apply for those who are in the mode of ignorance?
Does the Ahobata Svapacho verse refer to persons who are chanting or performing devotional service in various modes of nature? Well, definitely it applies to those who are chanting with pure motive, and less so to those who do so with some other motivation. If bhakti is considered to be a pious activity, that's not really bhakti at all. If someone has performed so many pious activities, why did they take birth in the family of dog eaters? Well, they might not have recently performed so many pious activities. It may be that even the mosquitoes who are going around biting us here, they may have also been some very high-class Brahmin at some point. But by the force of time, Kala Chakra, sometime they go up and then sometime they come down. But the general understanding is that if one is born in a family of dog eaters, he does so due to previous impious activities. But if he's constantly chanting the holy names with love, that means that it's already included. He's surpassed all of that. Just like if someone, it may be that someone is born with just some inborn siddhi, some inborn ability. There's someone who, without any study, he just picks up any musical instrument and immediately can play it expertly. So such a person may not need to go to music school. So if somehow or other, if one is chanting the holy names, then he's already surpassed all those lower stages, or interim stages. And that is possible by the mercy of Krishna's devotees. It also may be that someone has performed such pious activities, but by some trick of fate gets a lower birth, or may have performed. There are so many examples. The Nriga Maharaj became a lizard. Later he was personally delivered by Krishna. So actually he's being delivered by Krishna. That means he was very fortunate to be in the form of a lizard, more fortunate, and be delivered by Krishna. That means he was more fortunate than if he had actually gone to the heavenly planets and forgotten Krishna. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, various great personalities were born in lower families. If they had all appeared in very high-class families, then that would have discouraged the persons who were born in lower families and thought that they were disqualified from coming to a high level. And those in high families could have claimed bhakti to be their birthright and not for anyone else. So by arranging for some of his devotees to take birth in very low families, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated that bhakti is open to everyone. It's not just a philosophical principle, but it's a demonstrable fact. When Srila Prabhupada first brought Western devotees to India, many people were opposed to that. People used to say, oh, I know myself, so many people used to say to me, oh, you cannot be a Hindu, you have to be born a Hindu, you cannot be a Brahmana. But practically the Western devotees of Krishna are accepted in India now because it's practically seen that they are practicing Krishna consciousness in a very pure manner. It's an undeniable fact. Well, still some people may deny it. But those who are sincere to get spiritual guidance, they'll be happy to take it, even from persons who are supposed to be disqualified. Okay, I think we'll finish there. I think looks like our young boys are exhibiting the ecstasy of pralayam, one of the symptoms of ecstasy. Pralayam means practically dead. On hearing talks of Krishna, they became so ecstatic they fainted. Is it? Okay, one more question from the other side of the Himalayas, from Russia.
You told us that the sound of Krishna's flute is possible to hear only with Krishna God. From the other side, it is said that Srimad Bhagavatam is the Krishna's flute.
The flute playing of Krishna entered the ears of Brahma and initiated him with Kama Gayatri. So that is manifested within this world. But it's spiritual. The spiritual world also, Krishna also comes to this world. But there in the spiritual world, the flute is always there. Here it's, Krishna's flute sound is always there. Here it's only rarely when Krishna comes. Katha ganam natyam gamanam api vangshi priyasakhe. In the spiritual world, there's those symptoms are there. Chidanandam jyoti param tadas api tas asvadyam apicha. The symptoms are there, but that's not in the material world. Sometimes it's manifested in the material world. By the sound of Krishna's flute, that which is solid becomes liquid. It means the stones melt, And that which is liquid, like the Yamuna, becomes solid, it stops flowing. That is inconceivable. Hare Krishna.
One more question.
Still more questions? Okay.
So yesterday you have said that if everyone tries to fall on the feet of Krishna, then who will kiss Krishna? But
Then who will what?
Who will want to kiss Krishna? But today you said that Krishna is not attached to anything.
Yeah.
How to understand this?
How to understand this? You come here and regularly hear. Ati Suksmah Vishayam. Krishna has no material attachment to anything, but he's very much spiritually attached to his devotees. Just like this. How can you understand? Sukshmatvat tadavigyayam durastham chantike chatat. He's far away and he's very close also. It's absolutely opposite. Apanipado javano grihita. He has no hands but he accepts everything. He has no legs but he walks. So how to understand all this? One will have to understand the spiritual nature of Krishna. How he is the supreme spiritual personality of Godhead who manifests himself in this world, but he has no direct contact with it. So these are very subtle topics. If you go on chanting Hare Krishna, then we can understand it. If we understand that we can't understand it, then by that humility we'll get Krishna's mercy and we can begin to understand it. Yeyam yat tat pravakshami. Krishna says, I'll no speak that which is known, but then he says, tad avigyayam. You can't understand it fully anyway. But still, we should try to understand. Hare Krishna. So we'll definitely finish now. Alright. Hare Krishna.